The city of Enugu throbbed with the relentless rhythm of commerce and ambition. In the heart of this kinetic metropolis lived Chick, a man whose influence was measured not just in naira, but in the sheer weight of his arrogance. He was barely past 30, a titan in the property market, defined by his custom-tailored Italian silk suits, the roar of the latest German engine under his command, and a stride that suggested the very pavement was beneath his pedigree. Chick craved public adulation and demanded respect, seeing the world as a mirror reflecting his self-importance. Yet, beneath the edifice of wealth and swagger, a daily, festering resentment corroded his peace. His marriage remained without the ultimate affirmation, a child. His wife, Goy, was a woman of subdued grace. Her skin possessed the rich, flawless luster of polished cocoa, and her large, kind eyes were usually shadowed by a deep-seated melancholy. Goy had tethered her fate to Chick out of genuine, unmercenary love. For 7 years, she had been the silent, dutiful backbone of his life, managing his grand estate and offering unwavering support as his empire grew. But those 7 years had become an agonizing march marked by dashed hopes and silent prayers. Each month was a fresh defeat, the devastating confirmation that their home would remain acoustically sterile, lacking the clamor of small feet. One oppressive evening, the emotional pressure that had been slowly fracturing their union finally erupted. The expansive house was steeped in a suffocating silence, the air heavy with unspoken grievances. Goy sat stiffly on the edge of their king-sized bed, her hands locked in a desperate, white-knuckled grip. Chick strode into the master suite, his expensive tie wrenched askew, his expression a mask of raw fury. The keys to his imported sedan struck the marble dresser like small thunderclaps. 7 years, Goy, Chick's voice lacerated the quiet. 7 full cycles of waiting, and still, my lineage halts here. Do you expect my legacy to dissolve into nothingness? Goy carefully raised her tear-brimmed gaze, her voice a brittle whisper. Chick, I have endured the struggle alongside you. We have explored every avenue. This isn't a matter of simple will. Perhaps we need to consult a different specialist. There might still be an opening for hope. Hope. Chick emitted a harsh, contemptuous sound. Is that your 7-year mantra? I am exhausted by the concept of hope. My own mother hounds me daily, questioning why you haven't produced a male heir. My business associates exchange knowing, derisive glances. Can you comprehend the humiliation of being known as the barren tycoon? You have reduced me to a public jest. Goy's eyes instantly flooded with fresh tears. Please do not assault me with such cruel words. I am your wife. We pledged fidelity before the Almighty. We promised to honor the commitment for better or for worse. Why do you weaponize my suffering as if I am disposable? Chick's volume intensified, his resentment scalding. Because your utility has evaporated. What value does a woman hold if she cannot propagate the family name? You consume my resources, you adorn yourself in my luxury, you ride in my automobiles, yet you fail to provide the one fundamental thing required of a spouse, a son to inherit my empire. Goy, your presence is a blight upon my fortune. Goy's lower lip quivered as she attempted to articulate her anguish. Do not label me a blight. I have prayed until my knees were raw. I have wept myself to sleep countless nights, beseeching God for a miracle. I am not oblivious to this pain, Chick. Do you believe I take any pleasure in this inability? Chick abruptly spun his back on her, beginning to pace the opulent room, resembling a predator confined within a golden cage. His anger amplified with every syllable. Spare me the theatrics of your grief. My patience has been thoroughly depleted. I will not permit you to colonize my future. Effective tomorrow, my attorney will be commencing divorce proceedings. This union is irrevocably finished. Goy emitted a strangled sound, clutching her chest as if sustaining a physical blow. Divorce? You would annihilate our marriage after all this time? After I supported your ambitions when you had nothing? After I severed ties from my own family for your sake? Chick, have you completely erased the memory of the affection we once shared? Chick whirled back, his stare frigid and unyielding. Sentimentality does not yield progeny. My mother's foresight was correct. I should have severed this relationship long ago. I require a partner capable of bearing legitimate heirs, not a woman who leaves this manor permeated with silence. By the time the sun rises, Goy, I expect you to have vacated this premises. Goy collapsed onto her knees, her hands desperately gripping the hem of his trousers. Please, Chick, I beg you, reconsider. Grant me further time. Grant us a possibility. God's grace may yet redeem our situation. Chick recoiled, violently shaking his leg free, as if her touch carried contagion. Divinity is irrelevant to this matter. You are the fundamental flaw, and I am weary of concealing it. You will leave. That is my definitive decision. The venomous exchange resonated through the solid walls. Downstairs, the domestic staff lowered their heads, none daring to intervene. Goy's desolate sobs echoed as she made a final futile appeal. Chick, look at me. Acknowledge the woman who nourished you, laundered your garments, and offered prayer during your sickness. I committed my entire being to you. Do not discard me like a worthless object. But Chick's resolute was steel. He reached for his communication device and, in her full presence, initiated a call. Yes, Barrister Okeka. Prepare the necessary documentation. I require an immediate dissolution of this marriage. Affirmative. She will be gone by dawn. Goy froze, disbelief contorting her faces. You had already consulted your legal counsel? You orchestrated this abandonment? Chick, how could you be so monstrous? Chick looked down at her, his voice clipped and merciless. Goy, you are a burden on my destiny. I am emancipating myself. If you possess any shred of self-regard, pack your belongings tonight. I refuse to see your face in this dwelling come morning. Goy slowly hauled herself upright. Her posture weakened, her spirit shattered into irreparable fragments. She moved toward the bespoke wardrobe and began the painful process of folding her attire into a modest travel bag. Her hands trembled so violently that securing the zipper proved a monumental effort. Every fabric she touched was saturated with 7 years of memories, celebrations, acts of worship, quiet moments of intimacy. Now those memories felt like carefully constructed deceptions. As she packed, Chick remained a stoic spectator, his arms folded, his countenance impassive. He offered no gesture of comfort, no sign of remorse. Goy finally hoisted the small bag, her tears now flowing without restraint. She turned toward him one last time, her voice cracking with the weight of prophecy. Chick, this cruelty will haunt you. One day the scales will balance, and you will comprehend the true gravity of your offense. Chick offered no response, deliberately turning away, treating her as if she were already an intangible ghost. With slow, dragging steps, Goy shuffled out of the bedroom, her footwear scraping mournfully across the marble flooring. The house, which had symbolized security, now felt like a gilded dungeon. She passed the household staff, who bowed their heads in respectful pity, avoiding her gaze. She pushed open the monumental front doors, and the cool night air assaulted her face. She paused, surveying the palatial home that had consumed 7 years of her existence. Then she uttered a quiet, potent vow. I may depart with only this meager possession, but I will not remain shattered. My God will rise to my defense. With that declaration, Goy stepped into the profound darkness, clutching her bag, her tears marking the departure, but her spirit hardening with the quiet certainty that this expulsion was merely the prelude to her new narrative.
Goy possessed no discernible destination as she fled the mansion that night. She simply maintained a forward momentum, clutching her small valise like a lifeline against her chest. The municipal streetlights cast weak, isolated pools of yellow light, but the road ahead felt shrouded in existential gloom. Her legs felt weak beneath her, and her vision was blurred by an endless stream of tears. Chick's cutting pronouncements resonated relentlessly in her auditory memory. You are a burden. I am liberating myself. She hurried past shuttered retail outlets, past slumbering canines, past market vendors securing their stalls. She moved through the city unnoticed. No one afforded her a second glance. No one recognized the figure whose life, home, marriage, and fundamental tranquility had been annihilated moments earlier. Her mind finally settled on one refuge, Amaka, her confidant since their university days. Though their adult lives had diverged into different economic strata, Amaka's modest residence had always represented unconditional sanctuary. Goy tapped tentatively on the door. It was approaching 10 p.m. Amaka answered, clad in a traditional house wrap, her expression a mixture of shock and immediate concern. "Goy, what misfortune has befallen you? Why the tears? Has there been a tragedy?" Goy was incapable of forming a coherent reply. She simply collapsed into renewed racking sobs, leaning heavily into her friend's embrace. "Enter, dear one, quickly," Amaka urged, guiding her into the small, comforting apartment. She settled Goy onto a worn armchair and securely locked the entrance. "Compose yourself. Now articulate what occurred." "He expelled me," Goy managed, her voice barely audible. "Chick!" Goy confirmed the devastating news with a slow, pain-filled nod, daubing her eyes with the back of her hand. "He branded me a blight. He claimed my failure to conceive was a curse upon his life." She hissed in outrage, sitting protectively beside her. "That man lacks any reverence for consequence. After a lifetime together, he never considered his own accountability. Goy, you have endured enough." Goy rested her weary head upon Amaka's shoulder. "I am lost. I managed to escape with only this small bag. All my possessions remain within that house." Amaka gently stroked her friend's arm. "Do not distress yourself. You will sleep here this night. You are welcome to remain for any duration necessary. I possess little materially, but this dwelling is now your auxiliary home." Goy closed her eyes and released a profound, shuddering exhale. "Thank you, Amaka." A brief silence enveloped the room. Amaka then rose decisively. "Come, I will prepare warm water for a soak. You need a hot bath and nourishment. Tomorrow, we will map out your next steps." Goy remained seated, her gaze fixed on the apartment floor. Her heart felt as though it had fractured into countless shards. That night, sleep was an impossibility. Despite the comfort of the soft mattress and the quiet atmosphere, her mind incessantly replayed the moment Chick commanded her departure. She relived his averted face, his expression of utter contempt. By the first light of dawn, her pillow was saturated with salt water. Days transmuted into weeks. Goy remained a resident in Amaka's home, attempting futilely to mask her sorrow, yet she struggled to ingest food and rarely spoke. She would sit near the window, staring blankly into the street, as if awaiting an improbable reversal of fate. Amaka deployed every strategy to uplift her friend's spirits. One morning she proposed, "Goy, accompany me to the marketplace. A change of scenery, a little fresh air." Goy immediately demurred. "I cannot risk public exposure. What if I encounter someone and they inquire about Chick? What information do I relay?" "You relay the absolute truth, that he is a narcissist who discarded a priceless gem in pursuit of common rubble." Goy offered a momentary faint smile, though it swiftly vanished. Later that week, Amaka introduced a crucial, sensitive subject. "Goy, have you ever sought comprehensive medical scrutiny?" Goy regarded her with confusion. "What specific examination are you referring to?" "A fertility assessment. Have you ever been personally tested to definitively confirm that the difficulty originated with you?" Goy shook her head slowly. "Chick was adamant that the fault lay with me. He refused point blank to submit himself to any tests. He insisted his health was impeachable." Amaka scowled. "And you simply accepted his self-serving narrative?" "I had no alternative. He was intractable. And his mother, she relentlessly defamed me. They colluded in placing all the blame on my shoulders." Amaka stood resolutely. "This ends now. We are proceeding to the hospital tomorrow.
We will insist on a full diagnostic panel. You require the unvarnished professional assessment of a physician, not the biased judgment of that entitled husband of yours." Goy offered no resistance. She was utterly exhausted by the relentless self-doubt. Perhaps, she reasoned, only a definitive medical answer could liberate her. The subsequent day, they traveled to the Life Hope Medical Center, a discreet private facility where Amaka was acquainted with a consultant. Dr. Uche, a composed middle-aged man, invited them into his consulting room. "How may I be of assistance, Madame Goy?" he inquired with professional kindness. Goy lowered her gaze. Amaka provided the necessary history. She was married for 7 years, no successful conception. Her husband terminated the marriage, accusing her of barrenness. She has never undergone an examination. We require a comprehensive diagnostic workup. Dr. Uche nodded thoughtfully. "Your decision to seek clarification is commendable. We will conduct a sequence of tests, and then we shall discuss the findings." The ensuing hours were occupied with blood work, radiological scans, and hormone evaluations. Goy was consumed by anxiety. What if Chick's malicious accusations proved accurate? What if she truly was the impediment? 2 days later, the results were prepared. Goy sat opposite the doctor, her palms slick with sweat perspiration. Dr. Uche carefully repositioned his glasses and offered a benevolent smile. "Madame, the comprehensive indicators are exceptionally positive. Your reproductive system demonstrates sound health. You exhibit normal, consistent ovulation. Your hormonal profile is well within normal limits. There is definitively no medical issue with you." Goy blinked, unable to process the statement. "Nothing? Nothing is wrong?" "Absolutely nothing," the physician reiterated. "Given the absence of conception over 7 years, my professional recommendation would be for your former spouse to undergo a thorough analysis. Based on these results, you are entirely capable of conceiving." Goy's hand flew to her mouth as tears streamed from her eyes. I am speechless." Amaka leapt from her chair. I knew it! That vile man deliberately deceived you, Goy. He shifted the entire responsibility to you to conceal his own deficiency." Goy felt a profound shift in her perspective. "So all this time, I was not the problem?" The physician's smile softened. "You were never the factor hindering conception. Furthermore, when you establish a relationship with the appropriate partner, I have great confidence that you will realize your dream of motherhood. Do not permit that traumatic episode to compromise your future serenity." They conveyed their profound gratitude to the doctor and departed. Outside the clinic, Goy sank onto a nearby bench, her entire frame trembling from the sheer impact of the clinical truth. "All those years," she murmured, tears now of relief and vindication. "I pleaded with God. I cried nightly. I harbored self-loathing, and it was not my failing." Amaka sat beside her, firmly grasping her hand. "Chick will be held accountable for the emotional wreckage she inflicted. I swear to you, Goy, one day he will witness your prosperity and regret the moment he allowed you to walk away." Goy lifted her gaze toward the vast blue sky. "Perhaps this moment represents the true genesis of my liberation."
The ensuing weeks marked a definitive turning point. Goy channeled her renewed energy into supporting Amaka's small-scale tailoring venture. Although a genuine radiant smile remained elusive, the suffocating shroud of despair had lifted. She began to adhere to a regular schedule, consuming small, consistent meals, and occasional laughter even broke through her reserve. One evening she confided in Amaka, "I feel compelled to initiate a project, perhaps a modest culinary enterprise. I have always possessed a deep passion for cooking." Amaka's response was enthusiastic. "That is precisely the resilience I admire. I will assist you. Let us manifest this." They repurposed Amaka's compact veranda to establish a food stall. Each morning, Goy meticulously prepared staple dishes, jollof rice, savory beans, moi moi, and rich, flavorful soup. By 7 a.m., professionals from the adjacent corporate complexes were queuing eagerly. Goy quickly gained recognition, not as the discarded former wife of Cheek, but as the proprietor of the most authentic and delicious jollof in the district.
One sunny afternoon, a regular patron offered a compliment. "Madame, you possess a noticeably different aura. There is a definite luminosity about you." Goy offered a soft, contemplative smile. "Perhaps I have finally found my equilibrium." Despite her nascent contentment, the residual pain occasionally resurfaced during the quiet hours. One night, while folding her cooking aprons, she asked Amaka, "Do you honestly believe he ever loved me?" Amaka regarded her steadily. "My conviction is that he loved his own status more. That is the only certainty in the matter." Goy nodded. "I simply lament the expenditure of so many years." "Those years were not wasted," Amaka corrected. "They were a period of growth. You forged an inner fortitude, and eventually, divine favor will deliver far greater abundance than you forfeited." Goy offered no verbal reply, but deep within her core, an essential transformation was occurring. A nascent fire had been kindled, an unshakable, quiet resolve. One quiet Sunday afternoon, Amaka returned from her church service carrying significant news. "Goy, try to guess what I discovered." Goy looked up from the simmering pot of soup. "What is it?" "I encountered Cheek's distant cousin today. He informed me that Cheek is advancing plans to marry a new partner, a glamorous socialite from Lagos." Goy's heart momentarily seized. "Oh," she responded, her voice devoid of inflection. "He is even distributing invitations to your mutual acquaintances," Amaka added, her tone suggesting mild distaste. "He apparently intends for attendees to witness the appearance of a suitable wife." Goy averted her gaze. "He remains fundamentally unchanged." Amaka moved closer. "Be warned, however, he might deliberately dispatch an invitation to you solely for the purpose of ridicule." Goy continued to stir her soup with deliberate slowness. Then she murmured, "He is welcome to pursue his vanity. My self-worth is no longer contingent upon his perception." That night, however, as she lay on her bed, her hand instinctively rested over her abdomen. She stared at the ceiling for an extended period, recalling the doctor's definitive pronouncement, "You are healthy." She placed her other hand over her heart. "God, if you truly witness the tears I shed, then demonstrate to the world that I was never the source of the emptiness." She eventually drifted off, not in sorrow, but with a faint, peaceful smile. The next morning, Goy was positioned behind her food station, meticulously polishing the counter with a damp cloth. The street was already alive, students hurrying, tricycle drivers blaring horns, vendors shouting prices. Goy, dressed in a simple cotton dress and a headscarf, presided over the fragrant steam of her jollof rice. A small queue was already forming. She offered a tired, automatic smile to each customer, portioning rice and savory meat stew into containers. Internally, she fought a silent battle. One part of her was moving forward, another part was shackled to the memory of the profound humiliation, Cheek's dismissive voice, and the painful label of useless that had been cruelly attached to her name. "Madame, 2 containers, please." A man's measured voice interrupted her internal monologue. She turned. The man who stood before her was noticeably tall, possessing gentle eyes and a serene demeanor. He wore a crisp white shirt tucked into well-fitted chinos and carried a streamlined black laptop case. He offered an easy smile, gesturing toward the rice pot. "Your jollof's aroma is simply too compelling to resist," he remarked. Goy managed a genuine, albeit fragile smile. "Thank you. Do you prefer the highly spiced version or the standard recipe?" "Extremely spicy," the man replied. "I appreciate my food offering a counter-challenge." The unexpected levity elicited a small, audible laugh from Goy. She packaged his 2 meals and presented them. "What is the charge?" he inquired. 2,000 naira, she responded. He tendered a neat banknote, accepted the food, and briefly held her gaze. "You are a woman of few words," he observed. Goy gave a slight shrug. "My concentration is usually focused on the quality of the cuisine." "Understood," he smiled. "My name is Emma, by the way. I work for the legal practice located further down the street. I anticipate becoming a frequent patron. Your jollof has successfully claimed my allegiance." Goy acknowledged him with a restrained, polite nod. "Thank you, sir." As he walked away, she filed the interaction away as just another standard customer exchange. But Emma returned the next day, and the day after that. Sometimes he ordered a generous quantity, sometimes just a single portion, but on every visit he contributed a minor joke or shared an innocuous anecdote. He never lingered unduly or forced deep conversation. Yet Goy registered that his brief presence invariably lifted her spirits. One afternoon he remained after the peak lunch rush. The street was quieter, the queue dissipated. "Madame Goy," he used the name from her display sign, "do you allow yourself any respite? You appear to have been stationed here since the morning." Goy wiped her hands on her apron. "I rest when I return to the house." Emma frowned slightly. "You should not be sustaining the strenuous effort alone. Do you employ any assistants?" "No, but I have become accustomed to the workload." A silence settled between them. Then he spoke again. "I offer a preemptive apology if this is excessively forward, but are you presently married?" Goy's heart skipped a beat. She looked away. "I was," she whispered. Emma nodded slowly. "My sincere apologies. I did not intend to invoke any distress." Goy sighed. "It is not your fault." He stood in quiet contemplation for a moment, then cleared his throat. "Well, please know that you project an impression of genuine integrity and immense fortitude. I find that commendable." He smiled, offered a slight wave, and walked away. That night Amaka was keenly observant. "Who is the distinguished gentleman who consistently purchases your food?" she inquired, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Goy dismissed the question. "He is merely a regular customer." "Are you sure?" Amaka teased, adding, "because his gaze lingers a little too long." Goy rolled her eyes. "Do not commence this." But Amaka's observation was accurate. Over the next several weeks, Emma's visits transcended mere culinary desire. He began bringing small, helpful contributions, cooking oil, fresh plantains, or crates of bottled water, claiming they were donations to support the enterprise. Slowly, Goy began to open up. She spoke about her journey as a cook, her mother's influence, and her latent ambition to open a full-service restaurant. One afternoon, Emma was seated on a plastic stool beside her stall. "Goy," he said, "forgive me once more for any perceived intrusion, but I recognize something extraordinary in you." Goy lowered her head, uncertain how to proceed. "I was also married," Emma confessed. "Several years ago, my wife died tragically in a road traffic accident. I avoided pursuing a new relationship until now. You remind me of what tranquility feels like. Not the superficial, ostentatious variety, but the deep, foundational peace that resides within your core and makes you feel fundamentally settled. I have no wish to rush your process. I only felt compelled to make you aware of my feelings." Goy remained silent for a long time. She looked at her busy hands, then at the steaming pot of rice, and finally at him. "I am afraid," she whispered. "I know. But I am not cheek. I will not inflict pain upon your heart." It took a duration of months, but Goy eventually consented to coffee, then a dinner, then long, companionable evening walks, and one serene afternoon, as they sat beneath a shade tree in a local park, she looked directly at him and asked, "Why me? You could easily choose anyone." Emma smiled softly. "Because you are the most authentic person I have encountered. You carry profound scars, yet you still manage to radiate kindness. You were broken, yet you refused to remain prone. That is the kind of woman I require beside me." Goy's eyes welled up. She reached for his hand.
While Goy was immersed in the all-consuming, joyful chaos of newborn motherhood, learning to navigate feeding 2 infants while effortlessly cradling the third, a great distance away, in a separate, affluent sector of the city,
Chick sat isolated in his executive suite. He was languidly rotating in his ergonomic leather chair, his gaze fixed on the glowing screen of his expensive mobile device. His corporate endeavors had flourished further. The fleet of company vehicles was more exotic, his bespoke clothing even more costly, and his financial accounts had expanded exponentially. Yet a solitary, persistent cavity persisted in his core, a void that no amount of monetary success could eradicate. He remained childless. After his cold dismissal of Goey, he had confidently anticipated a swift, uncomplicated progression into a new life. He was convinced that securing a new partner, one biologically capable of providing the desired progeny, would instantly restore balance to his world. This was a grave miscalculation. He had dated 3 different women in the span of the past 3 years. None of the relationships had resulted in a pregnancy. One woman, exasperated after a year, finally abandoned him, citing an inability to tolerate his mother's behavior, Mama Ike, who treated every potential daughter-in-law as nothing more than a potential incubator. Mama Ike, though aged, retained a sharp, critical edge to her voice. "You are unserious," she frequently chastised him. "You prioritize fleeting trends over the fundamental necessity of family. When I initially selected Goey for you, I advised patience. It was your own impulsive pride that drove her away." Chick would invariably respond with a surge of rage. "Do not utter that woman's name in my presence again." But late at night, when the staff had retired and the immense house settled into an echoing quiet, his mind would invariably drift. Where had Goey gone? Had she remarried? Had she found some measure of happiness? One morning, while idly browsing a social media platform, he encountered an image that instantly paralyzed him. A close-up photograph of an infant's leg. Then a subsequent photo, tiny perfect fingers clasping a woman's thumb. He scrutinized the images, attempting to confirm the impossible. The hand visible in the photograph possessed the unmistakable skin tone and delicate grip that was characteristic of Goey. It cannot be, he rationalized. It is merely a coincidence. But the image lingered, a persistent irritant. He resolved to smother the suspicion with a substantial distraction, a new relationship. That very week, his friend Cunnell contacted him. "My man, I have found the connection you need," Kuhnel said over the secure line. "Who is it?" Chick asked dismissively. "Her name is Adora. She is recently repatriated from Lagos, a highly successful fashion designer from an established, wealthy family. She is stunning, exceptionally refined and sophisticated, and listen to this. She is explicitly seeking a committed partner, not just another fleeting romance." Chick gave a cynical laugh. "You are describing her as if she were a new luxury sedan." "I am completely serious," Kuhnel insisted. "She is a distinct personality. You will find her captivating." Chick sighed in surrender. "Very well, arrange the introduction." They met 2 nights later at an exclusive high-end restaurant. Adora precisely matched the description: statuesque, strikingly attractive, with flowing, meticulously styled hair and manicured golden nails. She wore an avant-garde gown that appeared to have been sourced directly from a European catwalk. Yet what truly captured Chick's attention was her verbal delivery. She was self-assured, articulate, and possessed the authoritative air of someone who had clear, non-negotiable goals. "So, you are the celebrated Chick," she stated, offering a small, measured smile while gently swirling the crimson contents of her wineglass. "And you are the Adora of legendary reputation?" he countered. They conversed for a concentrated 2 hours, discussing corporate strategies, global travel, and their personal philosophies. But the subject that Chick forcefully injected into the conversation was the formation of a family. "I have been prepared to establish a family for years," he stated with calculated earnestness. "I have simply been unable to secure the right woman to fulfill that role." Adora arched a delicate eyebrow. "You were previously married, were you not?" "Indeed," Chick confirmed quickly, "but unfortunately she proved unable to bear children. We endured years of disappointment. Adora offered no immediate comment, simply providing a slow, thoughtful nod. Then she smiled. I am not an advocate for needless delay, but I certainly desire children. Perhaps a complement of 2 or 3. Chick's heart quickened with excitement. Precisely my preference. Within a single month, they were a ubiquitous item, appearing together at every high-profile event. Weddings, product launches, even religious services. Speculation ignited. Chick had finally and definitively moved on. He showered Adora with expensive tokens of his affection, designer apparel, the newest communication technology, and eventually a luxury vehicle. One day, Adora delivered an ultimatum. We should not engage in pointless temporal expenditure. If our intentions are serious, let us formalize the arrangement. Formalize what? Chick asked, momentarily confused. Marriage, she stated, taking a serene sip of her juice, as if the pronouncement was trivial. You are prepared already? I am an autonomous adult. I am acutely aware of my desires. I reject the notion of a decade-long courtship. If you desire my commitment, demonstrate it. That night, Chick contacted his event coordinator. The mobilization for the wedding commenced immediately. His directive was absolute perfection. It was to be the most extravagant matrimonial event the city had ever witnessed. A custom red carpet, a fleet of Rolls-Royces, a renowned musical ensemble imported from Ghana, and guests flown in from global financial centers. Chick became maniacal, obsessed with maximizing the opulence of the ceremony, not out of pure affection, but to validate his triumph to his peers, his mother, and the global audience. He desperately needed everyone to see that he had ascended, that his life was immeasurably superior without Goey. And in the hidden recess of his mind, a malignant whisper confirmed his true motivation. He wanted Goey to witness his ultimate vindication. One afternoon, while reviewing the final guest ledger with his planner, Chick paused abruptly. Add one particular name to this list, he instructed. Whose name? The planner inquired. Chick retrieved a pen and inscribed the name himself. Goey. The planner raised an eyebrow in surprise. Your former wife? Chick offered no explanation, merely smiling with a predatory coldness. Dispatch a formal invitation to her. First-class presentation. I insist on her physical presence, front row seating. Meanwhile, Adora was meticulously managing her own preparations. Her bridal gown was commissioned from an exclusive Milan atelier. The lace alone cost more than a conventional family car. Her bridal party was rigorously practicing synchronized choreography. Her bridal shower was scheduled for a prestigious beach resort. To the external world, she was a picture of radiant, flawless confidence. But behind the closed doors of their luxurious bedroom, Adora was consumed by a mounting anxiety. She had been actively attempting to conceive for several months. 0 success. Every morning she consulted her fertility tracker. Every evening she subjected pregnancy tests to intense scrutiny. All negative. She had withheld this information from Chick, crippled by fear, and her mother's precautionary voice echoed ominously in her consciousness. Are you absolutely certain the deficiency does not originate with the man? 2 weeks prior to the scheduled ceremony, Adora finally raised the delicate subject. They were relaxing on the bed, reviewing photographs on her phone. She spoke quietly. Chick, do you ever consider undergoing a medical consultation? Chick looked at him with suspicion. For what purpose? A comprehensive checkup, she clarified carefully, simply to ensure absolute physiological health before we solemnize our union. He immediately frowned. What precisely are you insinuating? I am merely stating, she stammered, that we have been intimately involved for months. No resulting pregnancy. Perhaps we should both undergo concurrent testing. Chick slowly stood upright. Therefore, you suspect I am the deficient party? No, absolutely not, she quickly countered. I am proposing a collaborative effort. His expression solidified into frigid disapproval. You are echoing the exact sentiments of Goey, he stated sharply, accusing me, attempting to make me feel inadequate. Adora sat up quickly. I said no such thing. He snatched his shirt. This conversation is permanently concluded. Never reference this subject again. Adora remained silent, but internally a new, chilling dread began to root. Chick, undeterred, accelerated the wedding arrangements. He boasted to his peers, "This event will reverberate through the entire city. I want my ex-wife to witness the tangible meaning of genuine success." Kunal, his friend, offered a cautious laugh. "So you intend to invite her solely to witness her own disgrace?" Chick offered a proud, cold smile.
She must observe what her inadequacy cost her. Kunal, however, looked dubious. "Are you certain that is a wise course of action? What if—" "There are no what-ifs," Chick snapped. "She will occupy that chair and observe my new partner gliding down the aisle, adorned in diamonds. Let her choke on the bitter taste of her own regret." On the day of the rehearsal, Chick found himself standing in the massive, deserted event hall before anyone else arrived. He surveyed the extravagant decor, the overflowing roses, the crystal chandeliers, the gilded seating, yet his heart felt anything but settled. He extracted his phone and stared at Goi's name on the list again. He recalled the gentle way she used to select his ties, the soothing pepper soup she prepared during his illnesses, the inconsolable weeping the night he violently cast her out. He shook his head violently. "No," he whispered, "she was the problem. She failed to provide an heir. I made the correct, rational decision." Still, his breathing remained shallow and constricted. He stepped outside and impulsively lit a cigarette. Miles away, Goi was meticulously washing one of the triplets when her phone vibrated. Amaka picked it up and froze in place. Goi, what is it?" Goi inquired, tenderly drying her baby's fine hair. "It is a wedding invitation," Amaka said, her voice strained. "From whom?" Amaka turned the phone. "Chick." Goi stared at the screen, a strange, powerful energy surging through her. She reached for the phone, read the elaborate text, then slowly deposited it onto the table. Amaka was incandescent with fury. What unmitigated arrogance is this? Is he mentally unstable or simply malicious? But Goi merely stood quietly, holding her baby close, a sudden, calm smile spreading across her features. "It is acceptable," she murmured softly. "Let him proceed with his ceremony." Amaka's brow furrowed. "You are not attending, are you?" Goi looked down at her 3 sons, all sleeping peacefully, their matching yellow outfits slightly rumpled from their morning activities. She offered no direct answer, but the decisive, measured way she walked toward her bedroom suggested a mind already made up. Goi stood by the large glass window of her own comfortable, modest home, one arm gently cradling her sleeping infant, while the other hand held the elaborate wedding invitation. The envelope was heavy, embossed with gold filigree, announcing an event of kingly proportions. The script was ostentatious and demanding. Chick and Adora, the ultimate union. She had absorbed the contents multiple times, the date, the high society location, the dictated attire, and then the chilling detail. Her name, clearly designated on the exclusive guest register. Goi, first row access. She lowered her eyes, inhaling a long, stabilizing breath. There was no sign of tears, no discernible tremor, but an intense emotional heat was steadily growing within her, like fire kindling beneath dormant stones. Amaka entered the room, carrying a nourishing bowl of warm pop. I still cannot fathom the audacity of his gesture. Is he fundamentally irrational or simply depraved? Goi remained silent. Amaka set the bowl down forcefully. Is he deliberately trying to inflict psychological pain after every cruelty he committed? Still no reply. Amaka insisted, snapping, "Goi, you must articulate your thoughts. Why the unnerving composure? You should have shredded that insult and deposited it in the refuse bin." Goi finally articulated her core understanding. "He seeks to diminish my stature." Amaka folded her arms stubbornly.
Then we shall deny him the satisfaction. We will not grant him that platform." Goy slowly turned to face her friend. She looked toward her 3 sons, now all slumbering in peaceful alignment on a play rug, their yellow overalls slightly crumpled from their earlier romp. "But what if we confront him with the verifiable reality?" Amaka's eyebrows shot up. "What reality are you referencing?" Goy's voice was measured, her resolve unshakable. "The reality that I was never the defect. The woman he branded as worthless is now absolutely complete." Amaka sat down heavily, processing the magnitude of the declaration. "Wait, are you seriously contemplating attending his wedding?" Goy confirmed it with a definite nod. "With the boys?" Another solemn nod. Amaka gaped, then let out a sharp, astonished laugh. "God in heaven, that arrogant fool will suffer a medical emergency. Goy, are you truly determined to proceed?" Goy's quiet smile deepened. "He desires an audience to validate his triumph. He will receive an audience to witness my profound vindication." The next morning was dedicated to preparing the weaponry for this emotional confrontation. They journeyed to the most upscale fashion boutique in the city. Goy selected a sophisticated floor-length gown in a regal sapphire blue, a color that emphasized the rich tone of her skin. She purchased matching, understated accessories and the highest quality footwear she could find. She had saved diligently from her successful restaurant venture, and now she reinvested that capital into reclaiming her dignity. Amaka, watching her friend's transformation, felt a swell of protective pride. "We need a proper driver, no taxis. We need to make an unforgettable entrance." Goy had a different idea. She called Emma, her beloved husband. Emma listened to her entire measured plan, the history, the invitation, the calculated malice behind it, and her quiet, powerful desire for emotional closure. When she finished, there was a long pause on the line. "My queen," Emma finally responded, his voice gentle but firm, "you have endured enough pain. If facing this man is the final key to your freedom, I stand entirely with you. Tell me the time and place. I will ensure the entrance is suitably magnificent." On the day of the wedding, the city of Enugu was consumed by the spectacle. Chick's ceremony was every bit the excessive display of wealth he had planned. The venue was a fortress of flowers and white linen. The high society guests filed in, dressed in lavish, coordinating attire. Chick stood at the altar beside his glowing, if slightly anxious, bride, Adora. He was dressed in a shimmering tuxedo, his posture rigid with self-satisfaction. He periodically scanned the crowd, a cruel eagerness in his eyes, anticipating the moment when his divorced former wife would appear, alone, clearly defeated, and dressed in cheap, outdated clothes. He had specifically instructed the ushers to seat her conspicuously near the front. As the ceremony's prelude music swelled, a sudden, significant commotion erupted near the entrance. The murmuring crowd went instantly silent. The main doors of the cathedral-like venue were flung open, revealing the blinding flash of professional photographers. A massive, imposing Rolls-Royce Phantom, polished to a mirror-like shine, eased silently to a stop at the foot of the red carpet. The sight of such undisputed luxury, surpassing even Chick's own bridal car, was enough to make conversation cease. A sharply uniformed chauffeur opened the rear door. Stepping out was Goy.
She was breathtaking. The sapphire gown flowed around her, catching the chandelier light, making her dark skin look like liquid silk. Her hair was styled in an elegant, modern sweep. She wore a confident, serene expression that spoke not of vanity but of deep, unshakable peace. She looked less like a victim and more like a queen. Chick, standing at the altar, felt the smile freeze on his face. He squinted, trying to locate the expected sadness, the cheap dress, the look of pathetic regret. He saw only triumph. But the true silence, the one that could stop a heart mid-beat, occurred as she gracefully walked toward the entrance. Trailing slightly behind her, each holding tightly to Guy's hands, were 3 little boys. They were identical,
Triplets, all dressed in miniature, immaculate white suits with royal blue bow ties. They possessed Guy's flawless brown skin and her unmistakable, large, soft eyes. The collective gasp from the 300 wealthy guests was audible. Chick's mouth fell open, every muscle in his body rigid with shock. He watched, unable to blink, as the woman he had publicly humiliated and discarded as barren walked into his ceremony not alone and broken, but validated and impossibly fruitful. She did not seek out the front row. Guy paused just inside the entrance, letting the immense, overwhelming reality of her presence and the presence of her 3 perfect, living refutations of his accusation sink into the silent, captivated audience. She held her head high, the faintest, most elegant smile gracing her lips. She made direct eye contact with Chick. In that single, devastating moment, Chick saw not just his ex-wife, but the colossal, irreversible error of his life. He finally understood the doctor's findings that Guy had once cried over. The true curse was not barrenness. The true curse was his own selfish arrogance. He was the problem. The children before him, 3 sons, were the tangible proof of his own profound deficiency, a deficiency he had maliciously projected onto the woman he vowed to cherish. Adora, sensing the complete collapse of the room's energy, turned slightly to see the cause. She saw Guy, the elegant woman, the 3 identical, immaculate children, and the look of utter, physical destruction on her fiancé's face. In that instant, she realized her own terrifying risk. She was about to marry a man incapable of giving her what he demanded. Guy did not shed a tear. She simply looked at Chick, who seemed to be fighting for breath, and offered a final, quiet expression of her triumph. She turned slightly, and a tall, confident, and handsome man, Emma, stepped from the Rolls-Royce, walking toward her with effortless ownership. He placed the possessive hand on her shoulder and offered Chick a steady, confident stare that spoke volumes. She is mine now, and these are the sons you forfeited. Guy leaned into Emma, offered a final, serene, victorious smile, and together they turned and walked away from the stunned silence. She had not needed to utter a single word. The message was delivered with perfect, crushing finality. Chick had invited his ex-wife to witness his success. Instead, he had been forced to witness her complete, devastating, and irrefutable vindication. Chick stood frozen at the altar, the most miserable man in the entire country, staring at the empty space where Guy and the 3 boys had stood. The truth, sharper than any blade, finally broke through his hardened pride. His whole life was a lie based on a deficiency that was his. The sound of the triplets' small footsteps echoed in the monumental silence. His beautiful, expensive wedding had become the stage for his deepest, darkest humiliation.